Welcome back. Lots of ups and downs for China's economy this year, but after 3 years of struggling because of the pandemic, trade volumes are climbing again and poised to stabilize next year. Chen Tong has more.
A month after our first meeting, we are reunited with container truck driver Wang Liming. We last interviewed him in April, and this time we are again following him to Shanghai's port district.
4月份我们来的时候，你说年初的时候订单不是很多吗？
对，
现在到了后半年，是不是慢慢也就上去了？这个。
好，年初的话，一个礼拜就干4天嘛，有时候3天，现在最起码就是5天，能干6天一个礼拜。
Wang is in charge of sending export goods from factories in nearby cities to ports in Shanghai. He said shipment orders have been steady in recent months, but he expects to get busier in the coming weeks.
马上这个春节了，有没有已经准备好了春节要大干一场？
准备啊，到春节的时候就没有休一天了，就。
On our way to the Shanghai port district, we are seeing a lot of container trucks, more than one we saw a month ago in April. At the beginning of the year, China's foreign trade has faced many challenges, such as post-pandemic impacts and sluggish demand in foreign markets. But clearly, things are getting better. Professor Chen, nice to see you again.
Nice to meet you again.
For the bigger picture, we turn to economics professor Chen Bo.
China's exports volume turned positive since August and jumped by 12% in November. So is foreign trade gradually recovering?
Maybe it's too early to call it a recovery, but I think it's confident to say that our exports is now stabilizing. So I guess this is a very good signal, showing that our trade will again be the engine of our economic growth for next year.
China has shown its commitment to opening up throughout 2023. At the 6th China International Import Expo, Chinese buyers signed intended deals worth over $78 billion with foreign sellers, a year-on-year jump of over 6%. This year marked the 10-year anniversary of China's first free trade zone in Shanghai, and in December, the State Council published a new plan to encourage more international business through the Shanghai Free Trade Zone, injecting confidence in the new year.
Next year, I'm still confident that our economic growth can have a pace for about 5%, which is compared with the rest of the world, especially those developing economies, we are still looking good. For the international trade part, because as we know, this year, the Western economies, they are facing quitting QE procedures. But next year, I think their economy will stabilize so that the exports from us will also be stabilized and recovered.
Global economy has faced many challenges in 2023, and looking ahead, there are still many uncertainties. But China has made it clear once again it will continue opening up its economy and hopes its policies will find some breakthrough while maintaining stability. Chen Tong, CGTN, Shanghai.
For more on this, we're joined by Andy Mok, Senior Research Fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. Good to see you again. Happy holidays. Quite the year.
Happy holidays, Phillip.
Quite the year in
Yes.
2023. We started off with a lot of concerns. Then we investors, I should say, we as investors wanted stimulus. They got the stimulus from Beijing, and here we are at the end of the year looking into 2024. Where are we when it comes to the Chinese economy?
No, you're right, Phillip. I think it's been a very dramatic year. And for me, the headline takeaway is there's no need to panic. So certainly I think the message out of the Central Economic Work Conference is that China's strategy, its implementation of the strategy is largely correct. There does not need to be any major changes. At the same time, what we heard is that adhering to high-quality development is the hard truth of the new era. So what this means is looking ahead, there needs to be some new approaches. This makes me think of a popular business book from a few years ago, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, how successful people become even more successful, in that the traditional drivers of China's economic success now are transitioning to new ones, including advanced manufacturing, and emphasis on national security and sustainability. So I think it is indeed a momentous year. but we have some bright spots to look forward to.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've been watching the Chinese economy now for well over 25 years, and China today is very, very different than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I mean, even without the pandemic issue, the law of numbers, it's just, you can't grow at 6-7% every year forever. It's not possible. And sometimes I wonder if some of the critics out there, and the optimists, quite frankly, maybe expected too much coming out of the pandemic.
No, you're absolutely right, Phillip. So there are the good faith, honest economic analysts, and I would put many in the professional investor world, institutional investors in this category. There are the economic pundits, which get most of the attention, unfortunately, and I think they are pushing an ideological agenda that is to undermine confidence in China's economic prospects. And it's unfortunate, but I think the more sophisticated, knowledgeable people know that we shouldn't put too much faith in these prognostications. But at the same time, we do need to recognize, Philip, as you said, the things that made China such an economic miracle. Low labor costs, manufacturing for export, focus on prioritizing infrastructure investment, really delivered tremendous results. But going forward, China has to transition, as I mentioned, to a greater focus on advanced manufacturing, this concept of comprehensive national security, and of course, economic sustainability, environmental sustainability.
Right.
So I think you're right.
Andy, one of the main areas of focus by a lot of the critics that you mentioned is the real estate sector, right? For better or worse, it has defined China's rise to what it is today, but also the concerns about maybe it doesn't keep going up, maybe things stabilize, maybe there's some issues with different real estate companies. For Beijing, this is complicated because it is one of the main drivers for the economy, but at the same time, Beijing cannot bail out all the bad loans when it comes to real estate, and there's this expectation that Beijing's going to come to the rescue on all these things, and I go back to what I said earlier, is maybe it's unrealistic for investors to expect that.
Absolutely. So I think the real estate issue in China today is a complex, difficult problem, but certainly far from an insurmountable one. And you're absolutely right that we look at this sector in and of itself. It has challenges, but it's also intimately linked to local government finances, even global commodity markets, right? So it is a complex problem. Also, I think what we saw, it's very related to China's stage of economic development. So in the early days of reform, China's financial system was far less developed, and real estate was pretty much the only major asset class that ordinary Chinese could accumulate wealth. So this, of course, led to a certain degree of speculation and the policy response that houses are meant to be lived in. And we see the rise of the stock market. We see alternative asset classes emerging in China. So clearly, we're in a transition period. Structural changes need to be made, but at the same time, this is the hard truth, right? It's not easy to make these changes, but I think that once they're made, China will be on a much more exciting growth path economically.
Andy, I got 30 seconds left. Let's follow up on the exciting growth path. The U.S.-China relations rocky in the early parts, seemingly to mend here in the later stages of the year. How do you view 2024 for that relationship and the economy?
Well, I think interest rates are going to matter a lot, right? So if the Fed indeed is on a downward trend, we can expect, especially the global South, to do better economically. I think we can see trade picking up, as we heard earlier, because of this. And one last thing I would say is a realignment of trade. Russia-China trade has really taken off the last few years. So I think I'm more optimistic for 2024, I think, than many other observers.